Clara was not like other girls in Lonesome Creek. From the time she was 10 years old, she was taller than the schoolmaster. Her legs were long, her shoulders wide, and her back straight like a fence post. The townsfolk said she looked like she had grown too much, like God had stretched her by mistake. She didn't choose to be tall, but the world made her pay for it. In church, the boys wouldn't sit near her. In town, the girls looked at her like she was some kind of strange animal. She had to bend her neck to get through most doors. At 16, she was nearly 6 feet tall. That was taller than the preacher, the sheriff, and even the blacksmith. The women whispered, "That one's cursed." The men said, "No man wants a woman who can look him in the eye." Clara heard it all. Every word, every laugh behind her back. She wore plain dresses that came to short at the ankles. She tried to walk softly, but her boots always made loud, echoing steps. She tried to keep her head down, but when she looked at people, her eyes were level with theirs, and that made them angry. Even her own family made her feel wrong. Her mother sighed when she saw Clara walk in, ducking under the doorframe. Her father used to say, "You're not a girl, you're a giant in a dress." At 17, when other girls were getting married and starting families, Clara stayed home. Boys would dance with her at town gatherings, but only as a joke. Once, one of them tried to kiss her on a dare. When she pushed him away, he shouted, "No man wants a mule like you." People laughed. Clara went home in silence, her fists clenched so tight her palms bled. She wanted to scream. She wanted to disappear. But most of all, she wanted to matter. She stopped going to dances. She stopped smiling. She worked long hours at the general store, stacking crates and delivering flour sacks, bigger than most men could carry. She didn't complain. She didn't cry. But deep inside, she felt her heart shrinking day by day. The final straw came on her 20th birthday. Her mother cooked a plain dinner and said nothing. There was no cake, no gifts, no hug. As they ate, her father looked up and said, "You should have been married by now, but you scared all the men off. Ain't no one coming for you, Clara." She put down her fork. She stood from the table, taller than both her parents, and walked out the door. That night, she sat on the porch and stared at the sky. The stars were quiet, the wind cold. Her boots were worn, her dress had holes. Her soul felt empty, she thought. Maybe I was born wrong. Maybe I'll always be alone. Then, a thought came to her, slow at first, like a flicker in the dark. What if being different wasn't a curse? What if it was a sign? What if the world that rejected her wasn't the world she was meant to live in? The next morning, Clara packed a small bag. She took her father's long rifle from the wall. She put on his old black duster. It finally fit her just right. She filled the canteen, tied a few coins in a cloth, and walked to the barn. Her horse, Ruthie, neighed gently as she saddled her. No one tried to stop her. No one asked where she was going. She looked once at the house, the town in the distance, the church steeple, where they laughed at her prayers. Then she turned her back on it all. She rode out alone, toward the rising sun, toward the dry lands, the outlaw lands. The land where law had no name, neither did she, but she would earn one. Not today, not tomorrow, but one day, those who laughed at her would hear stories. Stories about a tall woman who rode like thunder and stood like stone. They would not call her freak. They would call her legend. Clara didn't look back. She left the town that had thrown her away and rode into the wild. The sun was hot, and the wind scratched her face with dust. But Clara rode on, calm and strong, with her tall figure rising above the saddle like a statue of the old gods. She had no plan, no map, no destination, just the road and her horse, Ruthie. On the third day, she passed a broken wagon. A family of 5 sat on the ground, tired and scared. The father's leg was bleeding. The wheel was shattered. No one else had stopped for them, not even the male rider. Clara did. She didn't say much. She gave them water and used her belt to make a bandage. She chopped a tree limb for a new wheel post. The father looked at her with wide eyes. "You're strong," he said. "No," Clara said, "just useful." She fixed the wagon and moved on. 2 weeks later, she entered a town called Dry Hollow. It was a rough place, full of men who drank all day and fought all night. Gunsmoke hung in the air. Most women stayed indoors. But Clara rode straight down Main Street, tall in her saddle, black coat flapping in the wind like wings. People stared. Some laughed. One man said, "What's that?" A man in a skirt. Clara didn't answer. She kept riding. She stopped at the sheriff's office and knocked once. Sheriff Duggan looked up from his desk. He was short, round, and didn't like surprises. "What do you want?" he asked. "Work," Clara said. He looked her up and down. "You're a woman." "I'm also fast, brave, and not scared of dying," she replied. The sheriff laughed. Then he looked in her eyes and the laugh stopped. "There's a job," he said. "Dangerous. Riders keep getting shot out east, near Buzzard Pass. You carry this message to Fort Banner, and you'll be paid good. Or buried, like the last 2 riders." "I'll take it," Clara said. She left before sunrise. The pass was narrow and full of shadows. Big rocks lined the cliffs, perfect for an ambush. Clara rode slow, watching everything. Her rifle was tied beside her, loaded and ready. Halfway through the pass, she heard it whistle. Then a gunshot. The bullet missed her by inches. She jumped off Ruthie, rolled behind a rock, and returned fire. 2 men in masks were hiding behind boulders. Bandits. One had a rifle, the other a shotgun. Clara didn't flinch. She waited, calm, steady. When the rifleman peeked up, she fired. 1 shot, right between the eyes. The other man shouted and ran. Clara chased him down on foot. He stumbled, dropped his shotgun, and held up his hands. "Please, ma'am, I didn't mean nothin'. You aimed to kill," Clara said. "And I aimed not to die." But she didn't shoot him. She tied him up and rode into Fort Banner, with the bandit tied to Ruthie's saddle. The army captain was shocked. "You delivered the message?" he asked. Clara nodded, and brought in one of the shooters. She said nothing, just handed over the paper and waited for her pay. Word spread fast. A tall woman had done what no man could. People started whispering again. This time, not in mockery. They called her the Iron Rider, the woman who walks through gunfire. Too tall to die. One barkeep said, "She ain't a lady. She's a storm with legs." Men started fearing her. Women started admiring her. And outlaws started watching the horizon, in case they saw a tall shadow on a chestnut horse. But Clara didn't care about names. She didn't want fame. She just wanted to keep moving. Every time someone called her brave, she remembered the days they called her freak. She didn't forget, but she didn't stay bitter either. She rode town to town, helping where help was needed, fixing wagons, delivering goods, facing danger with a calm heart and a fast draw. But something had changed. The girl who once bent her head in shame now held it high. The woman who once felt too tall now walked like she owned the ground beneath her boots. The world had pushed her out, but the Wild West had opened its arms, and she was just getting started. Clara was no longer just a rider. She was now a name whispered across the Wild West. They called her the Tall Lady of Iron Dust. She had become a legend, not because she wanted to, but because people saw her do things no one else dared. She didn't work for gold or glory. She worked for justice, for peace, and sometimes, just because it was the right thing to do. Clara didn't live in any one town. She slept under trees, in old barns, or beside her horse, Ruthie. People started leaving food and water out near trail posts, hoping the tall lady would stop by. Her rifle never missed. Her eyes were always watching. Some said she was part angel, part ghost. One evening, near the town of Dead Hollow, Clara heard gunfire. The wind carried the sound across the plains. She rode toward it without thinking. When she arrived, she saw a barn burning, smoke rising into the sky. A gang of outlaws stood outside, laughing, holding torches. Inside the barn, people were screaming to women and a child. Clara didn't wait. She galloped Ruthie straight through the gang like a black storm. Bullets flew. One cut across her arm, but she didn't stop. She jumped off her horse, kicked down the barn door, and ran inside. The fire was hot, the smoke thick. Clara threw off her coat and covered the child's face. She lifted the girl in one arm and took the mother and sister by the hand. They ran through fire. Outside, the gang waited with pistols. Clara turned to face them, bleeding and smirking. She raised her rifle with one hand, holding the child with the other. "I'll give you one chance," she said, her voice calm. The leader laughed. "One woman can't fight us all." Then Clara shot his hat clean off his head. No one laughed after that. She didn't kill them. She didn't need to. Her stare alone sent them riding off in fear, like wolves chased by thunder. The family cried and hugged her. The townspeople came out from hiding. They had seen what happened. She walked through fire. They said she held a child and still beat the gang. She ain't a woman, she's a force of nature. The sheriff tried to thank her, but Clara just nodded, wrapped her wound in a cloth, and rode off before sunrise. She became even more famous after that. Miners in Copper Hills said she rescued a group trapped by a landslide. A trader in Dust Valley swore she stopped a train robbery with only her words and one warning shot. And in Widow's Peak, an old man claimed Clara once made an entire saloon full of drunk men lower their guns just by walking in and staring them down. But through it all, Clara stayed quiet. She didn't drink. She didn't dance. She didn't stay in one place long enough to make friends. Her only partner was Ruthie, her horse. Her only reward was the silence of the open trail. People started writing about her in songs, poems, even in newspapers. Some said she was a hero. Others called her a ghost who showed up when justice was needed. But Clara didn't care. Every time she passed a mirror, she still saw that tall girl from Lonesome Creek. The one people laughed at. The one who sat alone while others danced. She hadn't forgotten. And maybe that's why she fought so hard, because she knew how it felt to be thrown away. Then one day, she found something that stopped even her. In a town called River's Edge, a man named Grady Collins had taken over. He had an army of gunmen and made the townsfolk pay him for protection. Anyone who refused was beaten or worse. Clara walked into town like she always did, tall, quiet. But this time, things felt different. Grady stood in the middle of the street with 6 of his men. He smiled when he saw her. "I heard about you," he said. The tall freak with the gun. Clara looked at him. Not angry, just steady. "Let the people go," she said. "Walk away. And this ends now." He laughed and pulled his pistol. But Clara was faster. 6 shots rang out in 2 seconds. When the smoke cleared, only Grady was left. Standing on his hand was empty. Clara had shot the gun right from his grip. "You've got a choice," she said. "Live quiet, or don't live at all." Grady dropped to his knees. That day, the whole town cheered for her. Women cried. Men tipped their hats. Children drew pictures of her with their crayons. But Clara didn't smile. She just rode off again. Into the dust hole. Silent, alone. A legend now, yes, but still without a home. Still, a queen without a crown. Clara had become a legend. Her name was known in towns she'd never even visited. People told stories of the tall woman in the black coat, the one who rode alone, stood tall in gunfights, and never lost her calm. But legends grow heavy, and Clara was tired. Years had passed since she'd left Lonesome Creek. Her hair had grown longer, streaks of gray showing at the roots. The rifle still hung by her saddle, but her hands ached in the cold. Her back still stood straight, but her heart had grown quiet. She wasn't afraid of dying. She had danced with death too many times. But she feared being forgotten, or worse, remembered only as a myth, not a person. She rode to a quiet place in the hills, a cabin with broken steps and a lonely tree out front. It wasn't much, but it was peaceful. She started living there, far from the noise. She chopped her own firewood, grew tomatoes in the dirt, and watched the stars in silence. Her only company was Ruthie, who was now old and slow. Clara thought maybe her story was finished, but fate had one more page to turn. One day, she heard a knock at the cabin door. She grabbed her rifle butt when she opened it. It wasn't a threat. It was a girl, maybe 17. Tall, with big hands and a shy face. Her eyes were wide with hope. "You're her," the girl said. "Aren't you?" Clara said nothing. The girl stepped closer. The tall lady of iron dust, the one who saved the burning barn, who stopped Grady Collins. Clara sighed. "I was her, a long time ago." The girl nodded slowly. "They laugh at me," she said. "Back home, say I'm too tall to be pretty, too big to dance. They call me names, just like they did to you." Clara looked at her eerily, she saw her own, past in that girl's eyes. The pain, the doubt, the fire that was waiting to burn. "I heard your story," the girl whispered. "It made me believe I could be more than what they say." Clara felt something tighten in her chest. She hadn't expected this. She thought she had ridden her last trail. But here was proof living, breathing, that her pain had built a path for someone else to walk. She invited the girl in, made her tea. For the first time in years, Clara spoke of her life, the truth, not the legend. She told her about the nights she cried alone, about the days she almost gave up, about how being tall wasn't her burden, it was her power. The girl stayed 2 days. She helped mend fences and fed Ruthie with a soft hand. Before leaving, she turned to Clara and said, "You don't wear a crown, but you're still a queen to me." Clara didn't cry, but her eyes were wet as she watched the girl ride away, proud and tall in her saddle. After that, others came. Women lost and lonely, came with questions. young girls who were different, men who had heard the old stories. They all came to find the woman who had walked through fire and never bowed. Clara never asked for thanks. She didn't care for fame, but she gave them truth, not glory, truth. That being different doesn't mean being weak. That standing tall, when the world wants you small, is the bravest thing anyone can do. She lived quietly, but her legend never stopped growing. One winter, Ruthie passed away in her sleep. Clara buried her near the tree. She stood there a long time, her rifle leaning against her leg, the wind cold on her face. She said no words, but her silence was strong. Clara never married, never owned gold or land. She wore no crown, no ring, no fine dress, but she ruled something bigger than a kingdom. She ruled respect. She ruled fear in the hearts of bad men. She ruled hope in the hearts of girls who didn't fit in. And when she died, many years later, in her sleep beside the fire, they buried her under that same tree. The people came from every corner of the West, riders, mothers, outlaws. She had spared girls who had once been broken, now proud and strong. They didn't build her a statue. They didn't write fancy words. Just carved into stone, it said, Clara, tall, brave, and free. She was thrown away once, but the Wild West made her into something no one could break, a queen without a crown.